Welcome to the Lion's Den podcast, presented by Coldline Technologies. I'm your host, Lou Augier. Today, we're joined by a guest who often says logistics isn't just his career, it's in his DNA. Simon Kaye is CEO and founder of Jaguar Freight Services. Simon is a third-generation transportation professional, carrying on a legacy that started with his grandfather, a trucker, and his father, who ran his own shipping line. For our listeners, we're going to dig into tariff mitigation and tariff reimbursement, which is a hot topic right now. But we're also going to touch on the broader themes of supply chain disruption and the tools and opportunities emerging that can help, including the use of AI. Simon, welcome to the Den.
Thanks, Lou. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Simon, your story is one of constant evolution, taking a legacy business and completely reimagining it for the digital age. Let's start there. Over the last 3 decades, you've evolved Jaguar into, a tech-forward global firm. When the world changed, like for COVID and, now the current tariff spikes, how did you pivot to keep your company agile? And what would you say, are the more common mistakes you've seen companies make trying to handle these supply chain disruptions?
Sure. I think we're living now in a world where supply chain disruption is the norm. I think pre-COVID, there was stability, or at least relative stability. Trade lanes were relatively stable. Freight rates were relatively stable and predictable. Transit times the same, relatively stable and predictable. People could plan. COVID came along and just blew everything out of the water. So I think the ability to be agile is the key to any business today. I often say that growth and success is not the biggest or the strongest, but those that can adapt the quickest.
That's very good.
We have a relatively small organization, but we're very nimble. And I think organizations today need to lean into their people and their technology in order to be able to navigate the disruptions that are coming at them thick and fast.
Well, it's one thing, as a leader to be agile, but it's quite another to get your clients to see the vision. In my world at Coldline, and even before when I was working in, the wholesale industry, I've seen many business leaders treat logistics like a tax they just had to pay. How do you help your clients reframe that perspective to look at, their supply chain as a competitive advantage instead of, a cost center?
I think historically, logistics has been a cost center. It's sort of been the red-headed stepchild within an organization. Sales and marketing are always, get the dollars. It's the sexy part of the business. But if you look at companies like Apple, Zara, Walmart, they've used supply chain to their advantage. And I think, what companies need to look at and need to understand is not how much is this going to cost me, but how is this going to help me win business? And I think supply chain is really at the heart of how companies can win business, because it's important regards to their customers, reliability, availability, and obviously cost as well. But speed to market in the current environment is just incredibly important. And so if you look around at really successful organizations, and others that I haven't mentioned, they use supply chain as a competitive advantage, because it really is a competitive advantage. When you talk about it simply in the terms of cost and how much is this costing me, or what is the price of it, I think you're looking at it completely backwards. And I often say that price is not indicative of cost. So, you could buy something that looks cheap, but ultimately it's going to cost you in the long run, whether it be with delays, additional costs, not sufficient product on the shelves for market. I have a friend in the UK where I'm originally from, in the retail business, who says, buy cheap, buy twice.
Right.
And I think that's very much true across many businesses, across many industries.
Yeah, my own father used to say, you get what you pay for. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so let's get into the heart of this meeting and talk about tariff strategy and cash flow. Tariffs right now, it's a current pain point. And to a growing business, cash is like oxygen. And Simon, as you know, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection launched their tariff refund portal on April 20th, which allows businesses to begin submitting their electronic refund claims for, I think it's over $127 billion in IEEPA tariffs. How does a business leader start? How do they begin to get their money back from the government? And do you really think this is going to be a streamlined process?
I'll start with your last question first.
Okay.
So it's the government.
Right.
So I don't expect it to be streamlined. I expect it to be very much fits and starts with regards to submissions, with regards to reviews, with regards to refunds. I mean, just from a very tactical perspective, the government, Customs and Border Protection have released their CAPE product, which is part of the ACE portal, where companies can submit the information necessary in order to recover the IEEPA tariffs, plus interest, I would add. So it's not just what was paid, but there's interest on top of that. There are a number of things. I mean, firstly, Customs is no longer issuing checks back to companies. So bank information needs to be entered into the ACE portal. Otherwise, no one's getting any money back. And secondly, information has to be clear and concise and in with the appropriate backup information. I think there's the thing that a lot of people are missing here and, potentially need to be very careful about is that this is the single biggest submission of information to US Customs by the import community. And so this isn't just a matter of companies claiming back their IEEPA tariffs that were deemed illegal and now they're recovering back, but it is an opportunity for Customs to review how importers have been submitting their entries. So that are their HTS codes accurate?
Oh, yeah, that's what I was just thinking about.
Yes. Are their HTS codes accurate? Are the value of the goods appropriately declared? And so companies need to be incredibly careful to ensure that everything that not only that they've done with regard to the IEEPA tariffs and submissions, but anything prior to that is consistent, is appropriate, and is in line with all customs regulations. Because I can't guarantee anything, but I highly suspect that a number of these submissions that are being done by the import community are going to be severely reviewed by US Customs. Companies are going to find that they're going to get questions on past historical entries and potential inconsistencies. So this isn't just a quick, easy way of getting money back, but this is a double-edged sword. You're going to see Customs using this as a way of reviewing importers to see whether there are opportunities for them to actually recover more taxes and tariffs from importers and potentially fine them as well. So people need to go into this with their eyes wide open.
It's a very good point for our viewers. Next, let's talk about tariff mitigation. Many entrepreneurs are looking to diversify some of their production away from China to avoid paying tariffs. From your point of view, where do you see some hidden costs in moving to places like Vietnam or Mexico that business leaders often miss in their spreadsheets?
Yeah, I think companies need to be very careful. And I think diversification and mitigation is super important, and it's a really good strategy, particularly in a world of supply chain disruption. So I would absolutely advocate for that. But when you're moving away from China, you've got to understand that China has an incredible infrastructure that they've built up over decades now. And when you're moving to other countries, this isn't just a matter of looking at factory cost and the cost of producing in China as opposed to Vietnam or Cambodia or Indonesia or wherever it may be in Southeast Asia. There are other really important things that you need to take into consideration. So infrastructure in those countries, quality control, supply chain and transportation services to and from those countries. So there are incredible amounts of services to and from mainland China.
Maybe capacity issues or
well, certainly capacity issues because you don't have that much service comparatively into Vietnam or Cambodia or Thailand or wherever it may be. And there might not be direct ports of call either for steamship lines. So you might be involved with transshipping cargo in Singapore or some other port. And I always say the more links you put in a chain, the more chance the chain has to break. The other thing that people need to take into consideration is that even though you might be moving goods or manufacturing to one of these other countries, raw materials often still coming from China. So China is still going to be part of your supply chain. And so, that's sort of like, just a handful of reasons to consider. There's also the regulatory things. So you mentioned tariffs, and that's something that historically was pretty much set in stone and knew what it was going to be. We know, over the last 18 months, it's been incredibly volatile and that can change very quickly. So I think, an importer needs to look at all of those issues. But what I would say, and this is sort of just generally with regards to manufacturing overseas, is you can't have all your eggs in one basket. I think there was a time when everyone had all their eggs in the China basket. Right. That's no longer valid or relevant, but you can't move it to another single basket. And I think that's something to take into consideration.
All right. So definitely diversify, but lots to think, a lot of things to
I think eyes wide open, right? And don't just look at the cost of manufacturing because there are so many other things involved: regulatory, quality control, raw materials, infrastructure, transportation to and from those areas.
In your experience of looking at the blueprint of these tariffs, are there other mitigation strategies companies should be considering?
I think there are generally tariff mitigation options that are open to companies. One is duty drawback. So, a lot of companies may or may not be aware that if they import goods and then re-export them from the US, they can claim back up to 99% of those duties.
Interesting.
So they definitely need to be aware of duty drawback. They also need to ensure that they're classifying the right HTS codes and to have a real hard look at how their goods are being classified to ensure that they're getting the most favorable and appropriate HTS code for their goods. And I think the other thing as well, all of which is legal and appropriate, is that they need to potentially look at maybe slight re-engineering of their products to have the goods fall under a different HTS code.
That's right.
And so these are all things that companies can do to either mitigate the cost of importing to the US and or claim those goods back through duty drawback if they're re-exporting the goods.
All right. So now I'd like to talk about cash flow.
Sure.
Your company offers trade and PO finance. So in a scenario where, say, a company is scaling fast, they're hitting, that credit ceiling, how does embedded finance in the supply chain help solve that scaling gap? Where a business has the massive demand, but they don't have the immediate cash or credit to fulfill it.
Yeah, it's what I sort of call the success paradox, where they've got, as you say, incredible demand, goods are flying off the shelf, their products are really successful, but their cash flow is tied up in goods in transit or they're unable to unlock it. And traditional financing sort of, looks at balance sheets and doesn't look backwards in the supply chain. So, we partner with we have a strategic partner that offers purchase order financing. So this isn't factoring, this isn't loans, but it's based on open purchase orders. So you get a huge order from whether it be Sephora or Ulta or Walmart or whoever it may be. They will finance against that to ensure that the goods get manufactured and the demand can be realized. And what our purchase order management system, which we call POEM, so purchase order event management, provides is that backwards view into the supply chain to understand where goods are, where they are in manufacturing, when they're going to arrive. So providing that to a lender reduces the risk as far as the lender is concerned and increases the risk profile of that organization. So it doesn't increase the risk, but it's sort of like their profile is enhanced because they have that visibility. So you've got the visibility from purchase order all the way through to delivery, which sort of puts the lender at ease, and you're able to unlock financing through PO financing.
All right, that's a good segue into my next question, which you've said Jaguar is in the information business rather than, the shipping business.
Sure.
And in terms of, embedded finance, how does the granular data, from your POEM system, how does that data help, de-risk? But you're basically saying it's that visibility you're talking about, right? That a standard balance sheet simply can't give you.
Right. I think standard balance sheet financing is very static, whereas PO financing and PO visibility, and so that's where we put the two together. PO visibility together with PO financing makes it much more dynamic. So you understand status of the goods, the availability of the goods, and like how quickly they're going to be at destination. So therefore, the importer is able to start the clock on receiving the money for the goods they've delivered and then for paying back the lender. So giving that visibility sort of like de-risks the whole financing operation. And that's a real benefit to lenders and anyone that's doing purchase order financing.
Okay, good. Next, I'd like to talk, or at least touch on, the use of AI and data for lean teams. Companies nowadays are getting leaner and leaner, and companies don't have a 20-person logistics team. How do those companies use AI to manage global shipping without having to manually track every container?
Yeah, so I think in the same way as when the internet came along, it sort of leveled the playing field for smaller organizations. AI is and is going to supercharge that for small and lean organizations. So, where you used to be able to have someone coordinate with an overseas factory or factories to understand the status of goods, to track shipments, to move documentation within their ERP or information within their ERP, taking it from whether it be factory documents or shipping documents. AI is going to do, if not all of that, a considerable amount of that. And the way that we use AI in our technology for our clients is sort of exception management. So rather having to sort of review every single purchase order to understand the status of it, AI and the technology that we use, which is our Cybertrax technology, provides exception management. So when things aren't running the way that they should, whether it be a delay at origin or a delay in transit or a delay at arrival, or the other way around, if something's arriving earlier than expected, those exceptions are flagged and identified. So lean companies don't have to wallow in huge amounts of information in order to find what they're looking for. These things can be revealed using AI and on an exception basis rather than a trawling through data.
Right. So the AI is there, a sniper of hey, alerting you to this issue or that issue.
Right, correct. And then, sort of like
instead of static reports that people used to look
right.
at.
So this is a matter of sort of like, it's a difference between data and information, right? And people want information today. I mean, they're drowning in data.
Yeah.
And I think we all know that, a lot of data isn't clean as well. And I think AI is going to help in cleaning up data. But people want information so they can react quickly. And this is, and lean teams, and it goes back to what I was saying before about being nimble. Lean teams need to pivot quickly, or companies in general need to pivot quickly, but lean teams can pivot, more quickly than large organizations. Sure. And I think that's true for us in our business as well, where we're competing with multi-billion-dollar companies. In order for them to make changes, it's like turning a tanker around at sea. It's got to go out of sight before it comes back. Whereas, we're a small, lean, or a relatively small and lean organization. We can pivot very quickly. And I think that's the same for lean importers, lean manufacturers. They can pivot very quickly. And I think we know in this age of rich information technology and social media, things change really, really quickly, and you need to react to that.
Excellent. Now we talked about the tariff mitigation and the tariff strategies in general, and the reimbursements. We've touched on financing growth, and now the use of AI. That's the trend right now. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of things to consider. If there's a business leader listening today who feels like their supply chain is this big black box they're afraid to open, what is the one audit or one conversation they can have with their team tomorrow morning, to get started, to turn their supply chain into that competitive advantage we talked about?
Yes, I think the one question that everyone should ask, if they don't know the answer already, is if our goods are delayed by 30 days, what does that do to our business? How does that impact our customers? What is the impact on cash flow? What does that mean to the business? And I think from there, they can start unraveling and working backwards from there. So what does demand planning look like? What do stock levels look like? What are our warehouse inventories and our sell-through look like? And I think that's where they can start. And it's understanding what a disruption to their current supply chain, what would it mean to the business? What would the impact mean? And I think they can then look at the significant areas that it would impact and start addressing those, whether it be cash flow, whether it be inventory levels, whether it be demand planning. Those can then be peeled off individually and looked at. But from a holistic, high-level perspective, what if our goods are delayed 30 days? What does that do to our business? And I think that's the sort of like the simple question that any CEO, any founder, any business owner can ask internally. And if the answer isn't clear, then they need to start digging.
Right. I could see that sparking a much bigger conversation.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And absolutely. And I think, in a lot of businesses, that answer isn't apparent. And the implications of it aren't apparent. So it's not a binary. Oh, well, if this is delayed, then this one thing is going to happen.
Right. It's
not. It's a spider's web of things that are going to happen.
Well, I have to ask you this question. If you were to start, a product business today, what is the biggest logistical risk that you would plan against that most people aren't even talking about right now?
Well, that's a tough question, because I think we're talking about so much today. I think I keep coming back to it, and I probably started with it. I think diversification is the one thing in every area of your business that I would look at. So from a manufacturing perspective, from a trade lane perspective, from a client sell-through perspective, I would want diversification in my business. Single sourcing, single carrier, single
so you're
client.
saying take it beyond like what we talked about before about manufacturing, take it all the way through.
Absolutely. Soup to nuts. You need diversification within your business because, and the last 6 years with COVID, with Ukraine, Russia, with Israel, Gaza, with tariffs, if that hasn't taught us anything,
Right.
the one thing is you need diversification because you just don't know where the disruption is coming from. And I omitted, weather conditions, right? So tsunamis, any sort of extreme weather conditions, floodings at various ports. So all of these things are disruptions to the supply chain. So, diversification in every area of your business, in every area of my business is crucial.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the masterclass in tariff strategies and the supply chain tools you mentioned. Before we wrap up, for our listeners that realize they need a pro in their corner, I'm going to give you 60 seconds for the Jaguar elevator pitch, and let the listeners know where they can find you to start that conversation. The mic is all yours.
Sure. Thank you very much. People can find us at www.jaguarfreight.com. They can find me, Simon Kaye, Kaye, on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out, connect with me. When I started the company in 1993, I realized very, very quickly that we weren't in the shipping and transportation business. We were in the information business. So information and technology has been the core to everything that we do. People refer to companies like us as freight forwarders. I hate that expression. I don't know what it means. So I coined and trademarked the phrase the freight architect, which is very much how we position ourselves, designing solutions that add value to our client's supply chain. So we're all about adding value and improving current state. I often say to prospects, if we're not able to raise the bar and add value, then we don't want to do business with you. We don't want to put you through the rigmarole of total change for the status quo. So we're looking to raise the bar. We're looking to bring visibility, transparency into our client's supply chain.
Simon, thanks again for bringing the heat and helping our listeners manage the freight jungle. If you're a business leader and feeling those scaling pains, don't wait. Get the right architect in your corner. And don't forget, like this video and subscribe. We've got an amazing guest lined up for our next episode you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time in The Lion's Den.